All right. Are you the bottleneck in your business? My guest today, Justin Lund, founder of Propel Enterprises, helps entrepreneurs break free from the daily grind and build companies that run without them. From fixing broken back office systems to installing automation and SOPs that scale, Justin's approach has helped countless of founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs reclaim their time and double their capacity. Justin, welcome to the Go4CEO channel. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, John.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, I'm super excited to have you on. These types of interviews really kind of get down to the minutia of really understanding how to run a business. And your platform, the things that you've been able to create, pretty astounding. We'd love to hear about like the background of what kind of got you to this point, the ideation of Propel Enterprises, and then we'll get into the minutia of everything else and how you help clients.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share. So Propel Enterprises, it was really an accident. It came about, I don't know, man, what foray into business endeavors it is for me. It's quite a few deep. But this one was accidental, and it's probably the most fulfilling and enjoyable that I've had of all of them. And it started amidst some litigation that I was involved in a previous business. I had partnerships come in and take a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars off the balance sheet, left me with the tax situation that I had to solve. And so I was kind of compelled to get into litigation. And the irony was, all of that pain that I was in the middle of was a result of me just being real ignorant and like I put up a wall with anything over here in the finances and the taxes. I was like, okay, you're going to handle that, right? And I'll stay over here in business development and relationship management and, all that kind of stuff. And it was going really well. I mean, we grew there was probably seven or eight businesses there. There was a kind of the main company and then some supporting companies that were doing collectively about nine figures, just south of nine figures. And so there was a lot of revenue, a lot of people, a lot of things going on. But like I said, I was really like ignorant to some of those details and just that I'm not good with numbers. I'm not good with this. And I just really turned a blind eye to a lot of those things. And therefore, I had to deal with 4.5 years of litigation to go back and just piece together all the previous 5 or 6 years and what took place. So I thought it was a little ironic that all these things I really tried to avoid, I was forced to deal with every day for 4.5 years through court documents and things. And it was in the middle of that a friend of mine called. She was starting a new business and she'd asked if any of the people working for me at the time, she's like, you have a bunch of professionals working for you, right? She said, can you help me set up a company and set up payroll? So we did, and just as a favor to her. And it was just her and another woman that was working for her, and they started this business and it started to grow and we just kept helping. She told a few of her friends within a year of that phone call, we were doing accounting, payroll, records, like bookkeeping for over 50 companies from Manhattan to Hawaii and a lot in between. And it was awesome that, and super ironic that here I was, somebody that always turned a blind eye and was like, oh, I don't like spreadsheets. But yet now I'm running the accounting department for over 50 organizations, and not small organizations. I mean, there's a few small ones, but there's several doing millions and millions of dollars, and we are their kind of finance arm. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't jump into spreadsheets to party. That's not, that's not where I go for a good time. But what became real fulfilling for me throughout that process and how Propel was born, because I mean, we didn't have a website. We didn't, it was a favor. And they called their friends and it just kind of kept growing through referrals. But my satisfaction came from working with those founders. And I began to realize that founders like me, they are more, I guess, artists, they start a business because there is something that they're passionate about. They can bake a really good cookie, or they can sell really well, or there's some unique value proposition they bring into the world that lights them up typically, and that's what gives them the courage to go out and start this business. It's never to get good at filing 941 federal income tax returns. I've never met a person yet who's like, I just can't wait to file a 941 when I start a business. So, or any of the other dumb, like requisite reports needed to start a small business. So me working with the founders to help them kind of overcome some of those limiting beliefs and basically say, hey, take a page out of my book. Don't turn a full blind eye to this. That doesn't mean you have to like be a master's level accountant over here. Just saying, maybe like once a quarter, let's get together. Let's look at your numbers. Let's try to understand just a little bit more of what these numbers mean and help you learn how to make decisions off of them instead of just a hunch in your gut or logging into your bank account and checking what the balance is, which does not reflect any of the accounts payable or the accounts receivable or the past due receivables or any of those other things, right? Or the balance sheet liability, like all of that. So it became really fulfilling. And just in the last couple of years, I really started to get clear that it was the coaching aspect of these other founders where I really could add value, where I had a lot of experience through a lot of mistakes and a lot of poor choices that allowed me to help others shortcut some of those potential pitfalls. So I love it.
I love it. Well, you reminded me, right? My daily hat is a commercial banker, right? So as much as I too, I don't think I fell in love with the spreadsheets to find out if you were debt service ready and can you service your debt for a loan that you're going to get with me, that type of thing. But the strategy behind it, the understanding, right? What's going to make you grow certainly was. So, all right, neat. You had these experiences. One of them kind of fell into a situation where, like you said, a friend asked a friend, you're kind of
Mhm.
mixing in this other thing that you're dealing with legally, which by the way, off camera, we'll talk because I had an exact same situation with my first business when I was 19. Totally
Really?
forgot about the financials. And my partner at that point was not very good with them. So
Mm.
we'll leave that to rest. But
Okay.
it's an interesting time in that situation where you're learning and you're not looking at those areas. But so now when you get to the level where you're like, okay, I have a business here, I have a model that I want to be able to pursue, and Propel becomes, the enterprise that it is now. What are some of the things that you did within that? Did you take the frameworks or did you perfect them and go another level with the way that you started Propel Enterprises?
Well, I get like again, it was very accidental in the way that it started, and then by the time we got to almost a year in, we set up a separate entity and thought, well, we better throw up a website, and hey, let's just lean into this. Um, the we were focused more on accounting, and honestly, I very much have grown to appreciate numbers and accounting way more than I ever have before, because it's because of that experience and just learning that you don't need a master's degree, and that's what kept me away from it. I think, John, that there's some I believe that we all do things based on the needs that we have as humans, and we have a certain set of needs, and yours are a little different than mine, and we interpret our world experiences all differently. But in my case, and I think there's maybe varying degrees, but there's some similarities with a lot of entrepreneurs that they have to be certain. They have to provide this. I had 98 employees, and they did not look at me to be like, oh, I hope we do this, and I'm think this might be. I had to go in there with certainty, and I had to go in and lead, and I had to be a decisive. And whenever I thought about numbers, all that confidence was gone. And so I think
Wow.
in my case, that's what kept it felt safer to build a wall and just stay on the other side of it than to go exploring those numbers. And it wasn't true, but I never really explored that. And through the process of a 4.5 year PhD in court, I learned that I could have started, like here I am, I'm dealing with it now. I could have done it back then. And more, I learned some simple things that I could have done, simple things that I still use today myself, simple things that, because honestly, I'm not that smart. I tried to make things simple, stupid proof so that I don't get in my own way again. For example, and this is some of the frameworks that I coach founders on today. Like I just start out, they think frameworks or systems have to be complicated, and it's not. It's anything that saves yourself time, energy, money, system, right? Anything. Like I wanted to get in shape. My first system to do that because I noticed myself making decisions in the morning, 5 a.m., not the greatest time for me to like be critically thinking. And I'm like, oh, do I have time to go to the gym today? I'd pull out my phone. Oh, now I'm screwed because I'm looking at my phone. Right? Trying to check my schedule, but then Instagram was the last app open. And who knows where that goes. So my first system to get in shape was I put my gym clothes by my toothbrush because every morning I never think about brushing my teeth. The first thing I've been doing that for like 20 years, right? First thing I do is brush my teeth. So I get up, there's the clothes, I put them on, I'm brushing, and then I start to wake up. And then my average, like my batting average, so to speak, of getting to the gym after I did that went through it was like 900. It was almost every single day that I went to the gym. And it wasn't always right then. There was oftentimes I would take the gym clothes off, put other clothes on, but then I'd go to the gym later in the evening. But just for some reason, that system saved me making decisions, exhausting mental resources at 5 a.m., or getting down some rabbit hole, and just going way off the rails with something else stupid on my phone. So those systems, I like to keep them simple, and I like to show other founders that, whether you're running a $5 million operation of some sorts, or you're just a startup doing two or $300,000, like a simple systems can start getting you results. So in finance, one of those, which I don't think you'd really call it a finance system, but it is effective. So I will stand behind it. My 1.0 version is today, which is today would be a good, well, maybe not today, but tomorrow, the next day, call your CPA and schedule an appointment once a quarter for the next 12 months. Do not schedule those appointments near March 15th, April 15th, September 15th, or October 15th. Otherwise, schedule the appointments. By doing that and getting them on their calendar and yours, you now have this place to come back to. And so if something comes up next week and you got to call in a month, you can go to your calendar, look for that appointment, and just add that to the notes. Now you have an agenda for that meeting, right? So you just kind of a placeholder. But number two, and often I don't even do that, to be completely honest. One of the examples that I share with some of my clients that was just kind of a fun story is I had a lease on an expedition that we were turning in the next day, literally like tomorrow, right? And with that lease, I've always driven the kids to school, but one kid was late this morning. And so my wife had to take the kids to school. So she jumps in the expedition. It had just snowed, but I'm talking like this much. The first snow of the season, just barely a little dusting. And she drives down the road, slides off the road, hits a mailbox. Doesn't she's okay, everything's cool, but somehow hits the front of the car, the side, and a little bit of the back. I'm like, I don't even know how you did all that with a mailbox, right? $18,000 of damage. Well, it just so happened like a week later is my call with my CPA that's been on the books for a whole year, right? I get on the phone. I'm like, Paul, you're not going to believe this shit. Man, so I always drive the kids to school. She drove this one time, and this is what happened. And he filters this through his lens because he's the CPA that you would expect, like, a little stale, a little dry, not the most bubbly of personalities. And he immediately is like, wait, is that the vehicle that you leased through this the such and such entity? And is that the one that, okay, are you going to get a new one? I'm like, I'm lamenting the whole situation, just complaining to him. And he's looking at it through his lens and he's like, accelerated depreciation ends this year. If you will, this is the end of it for now to get the full thing, go buy a new truck. He starts rattling things off like an auctioneer. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't understand what you're saying, but I think you're telling me that if I buy a truck this year, it's going to be good for me. He's like, yes, go get one. You got to take delivery before the end of the year. It was almost Thanksgiving, so it was close. So I got off that call, called the dealership, and I'm like, could you give me a truck? Here's kind of what I would go for. And I ended up saving like 40 grand that year in taxes off my tax bill. And if I wouldn't have done that, like if that call wouldn't have been scheduled, I would not have known. I did not need to replace the vehicle. So that I had no sense of urgency to deal with it before that. And I sure as heck didn't know the tax code. That's for darn sure. But because that was in place, it made a difference. I was able to accelerate all the depreciation there. It was able to change my marginal tax rate because everything else came down. So I'm being taxed a lesser amount on all other income. And it saved me a fortune for just a simple phone call. And people think like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say. Like I had zero things to say to him that day. And that's why I started off just being like, Paul, dude, you're not going to believe what just happened. It turned into a 40,000 plus in my pocket. Like it was awesome.
That's awesome. No, and you know what? You said a critical acronym, and I used to say in my beginning, John the Bomb, building others means business for bomb. System
Okay.
is save yourself time, energy, and money, right? And if you
Yes.
haven't learned that Go4CEO community, that last 2 minutes is a classic example of putting in something that will create a momentum of saving yourself time, energy, and money. Because as you just heard, that money was saved by having something critically in your calendar. So, all
For
right.
sure.
Well, look, you've developed these systems and processes, right? The business of Propel Enterprises starts with this kind of, formidable lack of want to be in the accounting side, but then
Yeah.
became something, right?
Yeah.
So now there's a real business here and you're growing it. What are some of the challenges that you kind of thought through or experienced from bringing on talent to, maybe having clients that were kind of guess working your guess, right? Like your work, right? Like I don't know, Justin, does this look right, or was this doing? What were
Mhm.
some of those anticipated things that came up?
Yeah, I think one of the unanticipated things that came up is that accounting tends to be commoditized.
Mm,
So we pushed 2 years ago. I we kind of just let things. To be honest, I spent these years back east and living in the woods and raising my kids, and I kind of took 12 years off basically. And this started in that phase, and I had the opportunity to coach a few founders, but it didn't require a lot of time, and it was fun. It kept me engaged. But then a couple years ago, I three maybe I decided let's start building again. My kids are getting older; they want to hang out far less with me now. The youngest is 15, so um, I don't have nearly the day-to-day demands on my time at home. And it's just a different role, a different phase. So I thought, well, let's get back into building mode. And I started pushing on growing the accounting side of the business, where the main value proposition is accounting and dealing with books, records, payroll, administrative stuff. 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, was the BOI report requirement. So we thought, well, yeah, let's help business owners with that. And there was, I guess, the unanticipated thing that came up during that push to start building is we brought in more accountants and bookkeepers, but we would always kind of be compared with a bookkeeper from the Philippines, right? And so it's like, well, no, we can't do that for $11 an hour, no, I can't do that. So we kind of separated some of those elements of bookkeeping and administrative stuff with coaching and really like kind of your introduction of me and Propel is really to eliminate the bottlenecks and get your time back. And yes, finance and accounting and admin stuff, that's definitely part of it, but that's where I pulled out my personal frameworks from all of the last 25 years of how I grew an enterprise from a startup bootstrapped to nearly 9 figures. Is I didn't do it because I had all the answers, and I didn't do it because I was the smartest guy in the room, and I didn't do it because I just worked more hours. Like none of those things were true. I was often the
mm,
dumbest guy in the room, and I tried to work as little as possible because I knew that there was a couple of things that I could do really well. There was a whole bunch of things that I could not do really well. And so I began to learn through some mentoring and coaching myself, people helping me to see this, that I could spend my time over here pulling levers that are like $10 levers, or I could spend my time over here pulling big 10,000 or $100,000 levers. And me taking a 2 day trip to go meet with a potential client and take them to dinner and create a relationship and earn their trust and build a business connection that could bring in $50,000 a week for the next, into the foreseeable future. Whereas me staying at home to try to figure out a little operational nuance that I'm not really good at anyway, because it requires building a good spreadsheet with a lot of macros and a lot of, oh man. So all of that. And I learned early on just how to get the focus on my time really being targeted and specific on where it got the most leverage in the business. And so that's what I work with founders on now. So the commoditization of accounting is tough, and I think that's only going to get worse with AI. And hopefully it's better. I hope there's meaning I hope small business owners have a lot more solutions and that AI gets smarter and better at crunching numbers, because it's not that good right now. It hallucinates too much, and it kind of screws up things. So be wary today of total AI based solutions. You still need human oversight 100%, I'd say. Um, but maybe that'll get better. And then my focus is if I can work with founders and show them how to cover that base, so to speak, like how to have some systems and practices in place, like that silly little, checking with your CPA once a quarter. It's a basic, simple framework, but it gives you a trajectory. It gives these founders a direction to get better, save money on taxes. Most people don't think about their taxes until February, March. And then there's zero things you can do about your taxes in February and March. Zero, literally none. But if you start thinking about it in October, you have the opportunity to really move the needle because you've got over three-fourths of the year is done. You kind of know the direction of what your year is going to look like. You can start forecasting with some pretty good accuracy. So if you make some moves to optimize your tax situation for 2025 now and over the next 6-7 weeks, you're going to be in a lot better shape. Or you just go into it like blind, like I did with all those years in my business, and you get screwed because taxes is the biggest bill you're ever going to pay. And there's better ways to deal with it. And if you need equipment and material, maybe I think accelerated depreciation, there's some new rules with that back on the books now. So a lot of things that if you're going to do them and you plan strategically, but again, this seems overwhelming, right? A lot of people are like, oh yeah, that all just feels like, and that's why I say just to call in with your CPA. Like that's the first place to start, and you'll be better off for sure.
No, that mindset is truly a game changer. And I talk about in my hat that I wear on a daily basis as a commercial banker. It's good to have a great accountant, a great attorney, and a great banker, in my
Yeah,
opinion, to be at the table with you as a business owner. So Go4CEO community, let's keep on teaching that, right? Have the right team around you. Have a guy
sure.
like Justin and Propel Enterprises around you so that you can start thinking in October what you don't want to start thinking in February or March of.
Yeah.
But you also need that CPA, right? I know mine. We literally just got off the phone. We extended our personals, and then we already did some strategy because I changed banks. And on the personal side, I already know after a certain amount of income, you actually your source. There's a 6%. Now I'm forgetting which one it is, but you don't pay that anymore after that income
Yeah.
level,
Mhm.
right? So all these little things he's reminding me of, like, okay, hey, you made the switch mid-year. After July, you're already not going to pay this, da da da. So it's so interesting, right? But you also need an active partner in that,
Yeah.
right? Not
Yeah.
a autopilot partner, just like in your finances, or if you're, in the world of investing, set it and forget it is not as good as active management. So
Correct.
that's
Correct.
the way to really think about it, and put yourself in the right situation. So we did hook in the audience today with, like, hey, you bring up systems and ways to get you off the business, right?
Yeah.
And not in it. So let's dive into those things, right? When
Sure.
you think about different industries, where are you suited best with Propel Enterprises to work with when you're thinking about, hey, you've been working too much in the business, John. Let me show you how to work out and on the business instead, and even
Mhm.
take some time off so that you have a system that's working without you.
Yeah, we do best in service-based industries. That's really, and it's our sweet spot is probably between four or $500,000 of revenue up to maybe I'd say 1.5 is kind of the 1.5 million is probably where people experience the difficulties and pains that we can very quickly and easily solve. That extends up quite a bit. I mean, I have a half a dozen clients right now that are about $3 million of revenue, and they're still feeling the same pains. Usually, to grow above five, you've had to you have to overcome some of these pains that I like to focus with founders on. And that's just getting trapped. It's all the symptoms that you just pointed out in that little segue of just working too much in it. You're the control, you're the bottleneck, you're control freak. You got to approve everything. You look at every email, you sign off on every quote. These things just it's tricky because John, the things that got you to where you are. So you've experienced in layman's terms, I would say you experience a level of success by just busting your ass, right? I mean, you get out there, you hustle, you solve every problem, you shake everybody's hand, you are just the man or the woman taking care of it all. That is what it takes to go from 0 to 1.0. But those very traits will actually hinder you as you go from 1.0 to 2.0. You have got to learn how to level up personally. You got to change what it is that you focus on. You got to change what it is that where you spend your time. Like you have to spend 4 hours a quarter talking to your 4 hours a year talking to your CPA. That might not have been on your radar whatsoever in that first year or two as you're getting a startup off the ground. You are going to need to shift your focus on becoming a manager of people. Initially you're just trying to do this project, you're trying to build stuff, you're trying to like perfect your recipe of whatever it is. But now you got two or three employees, and humans are messy and they're complicated and they're hard to deal with. And you have to now shift and deliberately become an effective human resource manager. So how do you do that? Do you think it's just going to happen naturally by itself? No, definitely does not. So in that area of a $500,000 to a couple $1,000,000 of revenue is usually where people start to feel these pains, and I call it a complexity ceiling, like a capacity ceiling. Either of those, they just reached their level of capacity somewhere, whether it's in managing people or managing numbers or just managing systems, and just everything feels like chaos. And so the only reactive thing to do, because the last 2 years or 1 year, our history says work more, work harder, work faster. So that's usually what people do. They double, triple, quadruple down, and they just start getting exhausted. They'll run themselves right into the ground. And it's like all those things you're doing, noble as they seem, they're wrong. Like you have to learn how to get out of that process. So I work with founders on a framework that I call the delegation priority pyramid. Because everybody's familiar with the analogy like building a house or a structure. So a pyramid is a structure. Like you don't start at the top, right? You don't put the roof on first. You got to start underground. You got to give it a foundation. Then you have ground level, and then you start going up, and then you put on the top, right? So that bottom level is administrative duties, and a lot of people jump to the top. The top level of the pyramid is leadership. So imagine this. You've got a founder who started a business and they're doing X, Y, or Z. It's that cookie baker, right? They're baking cookies, they grow, they add two or three, four employees. There's a lot of chaos going on. They can't get out of they can't let go. They're controlling everything. They're so taxed, and they're running themselves into the ground. They tend, because entrepreneurs are special and they know how to solve problems, they start fantasizing about this solution. And this solution looks like a unicorn out in the wild, right? Like they think of their operator to their visionary. And it's like, if I just found the person that could be my COO, this would be great. So they often, in this fantasizing problem solving mindset that they have, that side of the brain, convinces them that hiring a $150,000 employee, even though they're only doing $500,000 revenue or 750, is the right move because they're the visionary and they need an operator, and they may have read a book like that. The Ducks have these philosophies, and they go and bring in the wrong person without any of the systems, they don't know how to work with a person like that. They haven't leveled themselves up. So typically 9 out of 10 times what happens is 6 months later, that relationship doesn't work. They let the person go or the person leaves because it was utter chaos in that environment. And then the only thing that has changed is the balance sheet. Like now they paid them 12 grand a month for the last 6 months, and they're like, holy crap, I'm broke. So they go back to work thinking, I gotta always do everything. Nobody can ever do this as good as I can do it. And it's not that. That's not true at all. Definitely not true at all. And I often say to the people coming in, like, I don't know, it's just my business is kind of different. It's special. It's different. I'm like, okay, do you have competition? Is there anybody that does what you do out in the world? Do they have someone that does this for them? And I'm like, yeah. So do you think that's unique? Or do that kind of gets their wheels turned like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe, yeah. Okay, maybe it's not that special. Okay, I could possibly. So the bottom layer of this pyramid is administrative stuff. That's the first thing to delegate. So I try to change their paradigm. Like you don't need an operator for your visionary role. You don't need to do all this stuff. Like we'll get there. Okay, if your goal is to grow this into a $25 million organization, sure, you're going to need COOs, CFOs, all the whole thing. But right now, you might just need a personal assistant, man. Like let's start there. Like let's get your emails off your plate. Let's get scheduling off your plate. Let's get deliveries off your plate. Let's get customer service calls off your plate, right? Let's start with that. So my focus to gain credibility with people is I just shoot for like 7, 8 hours a week. So my goal, if I can go in and It's really not that hard. It's almost everybody is leaking a lot of time. So when I can restore to their sanity and their calendar 8, 9, 10 hours in a week, they're like, "Oh, whoa, that's measurable. Like that's a big win. That's like a whole day back. Now I got 8 days a week. This is awesome." So now it's strategically redeploying that time to do something else with it. Like, what are we going to do? We might need to schedule that call with the CPA. We might need to work on human resource development and management, right? And I mean, schedule a massage for goodness sakes, too. Like, go, you're the boss, you're the founder, you work hard, you earned it. Go have a massage once a month. And I literally make that like part of their prescription because it helps you fill your bucket and feel it gives you that sense of I am worth it, and it helps you kind of unlock new mindsets to grow to the next level and the next level.
So administrative is such a key component, right? I learned a long time ago, don't do the $15 to $20 an hour work when you could be doing the $250 to $300 an
Yeah.
hour work, right? So
Yeah.
I love that component. So the next layer, what are you building off of administrative? Because obviously there's so many neat tools. Obviously AI can start to build off of that administrative. There's some things that we're all learning
Mhm.
with all these different types of AIs, and also still obviously the great world of virtual assistants and live people coming into your office that maybe take things off your plate. It's certainly immeasurable and so worthwhile and priceless to have someone by your side that could take those things off your plate. What is that next layer? I'm very curious about.
So if you're talking about going up the pyramid, and
Yep.
yeah, okay, that's delivery and fulfillment, right? So if you get into, for example, let's say you are running a plumbing company, and you start off, so you start with the foundation, and you get yourself an assistant and maybe a bookkeeper. So now all this stuff, the invoicing, the collections, by doing that and focusing on that bottom layer at first, what you're doing is you're getting back a significant amount of time, but you're also building some new skills, some soft skills that you didn't recognize you even needed. You're learning how to delegate the work. You're learning how to tell somebody else how to invoice for the job, a 50% deposit before you ever get started, 25% on this date, which turns into SOPs, like systems. So these beliefs like, oh, I'm just not good with systems, it's because you're jumping up and you're doing things out of sequence and out of order. And sequence is important, right? In business, it's critical. It's very important. So the wrong thing at the right time, no good. Right thing, wrong time, not good. Right thing, right time, yes. Okay, that's what we're going for. So the next is delivery and fulfillment. So back to the plumbing organization. Now that we have people taking care of that, that would give a founder a significant amount of time back on that bottom layer. So they focus on delivery or fulfillment. So what does a plumber deliver or fulfill? It depends if they're doing like are they a service call company? Do they show up and unclog people's toilets and drains and stuff? Or do they do new construction and builds? Is it commercial, residential, or all of the above? And maybe it is a little bit of all of the above. Like we do new builds, but we also have a service division. So in that case, it's picking one. I'd just start with one and figuring out how you can get some automation and delegation to where you are getting 90%. Like you want an outcome that is about 80 to 90% of what you could get if you were there in the customer's home delivering or fulfilling the call yourself. So that's another misconception. A lot of founders think nobody's ever going to do it as good as me. Yeah, no kidding, man. But if you can get 90% as good as you and never have to show up, that's pretty freaking awesome. That's what we're aiming for. Like, not perfect, just something perfect, right? Something that we can deal with, something that we can replicate. So that's where most of the energy goes. A majority of the energy would go into the delivery and fulfillment. So in service, it's like, okay, we got to figure out systems, scheduling, but now you have an assistant who's capable that can help you do that. So it accelerates the next level. Because there's other people, like I said, I don't jump into spreadsheets for fun, for instance, but there's a woman in my office that I literally sat down with her a couple of months ago. I'm like, hey, will you help me? We need to plan like a company barbecue. It's summertime and I just want to have a little fun as an organization. And she's like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. Lights up, turns around to her computer. What pops up but Microsoft Excel? I'm like, I'm talking about a barbecue. She's like, I know, I just want to get it all organized. And to me, that's like a different language, right? I don't even understand it. But I also am so grateful that that's what she does because without her, Nobody would want to do that around her here, and we would have chaos in a lot of the other departments. But because she processes everything through that, so the same thing when you start getting into plumbing fulfillment and service calls, you now have an assistant and a bookkeeper that can help with components of that and do the spreadsheet part of it, which the founder is likely never going to be the person that's good at doing that. They might, but it's usually not their strong suit. But now you have a couple people up to speed who can help. And now you optimize it, kind of hone in the delivery and fulfillment. So now these calls can come in. There's a system for them coming in. Maybe it's a new software, a platform, a tool, a CRM, a scheduling device, a billing system, a ticketing system, and an invoicing system, all plugged in. So now that gets optimized to where the owner doesn't need to spend 8, 9, 12 hours a day figuring out why is service calls getting just jacked every time they come in. It doesn't go right. To now we move up. We've solved that one.
It's interesting. I've done this podcast 3 to 5 years. I've been a commercial banker for a long time. I've owned my own business, sold it in '09, became a banker, but I'm giddy right now. Go4CEO community. I'm literally giddy because I literally talk about this on a daily basis with my clients, right?
Yeah.
And my clients are 5 million to 150 million in revenue, but I worked up to that, right? I didn't get into
Yeah.
banking straight into that atmosphere. So I mostly was in your target market between
Yeah.
250 and like 1.5. And I cannot tell you how many times my blinds guy in my house, I've asked him, why aren't you growing? Oh,
Yeah.
John, people don't do installments like I do. And that's his literal thing of why
Yeah.
his West Suburban blinds is not growing to be hunter blind, like, or like
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
like
Right.
something humongous because he's just limiting himself. And I've long let him, just take my referrals and
Yeah.
do his thing, right?
Yep.
But it's interesting. And this whole dynamic of administrative baseline, development and fulfillment, what's the next one now? Because I'm anticipating leadership, which is
Okay.
such a key component. But what is that next layer in between that then?
The next one's opportunities, marketing.
Okay.
Okay. So you don't want to delegate marketing ahead of any of these others. You don't want to try. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not focusing on getting opportunities. Obviously, opportunities are the lifeblood, but the owner and this pyramid is designed in a way to give some scale so that as you go up a level, things get a little more complex and they're maybe a little more challenging to just to let go of or to have somebody do as good as you sort of thing. So marketing is the next one because it's more important. So you don't want to jump in, start up, be like, okay, I'm going to be the plumber, but I'm going to hire an agency to do the marketing. How many times, if you have the experience with this target market, how many times have you talked to somebody who's like, these damn agencies, I paid them 20 grand and they didn't do an effing thing, like I've heard that so many times. And it's like, you haven't even begun to look at the admin side and you hired an agency for 25 grand a month. Like, come on. You can't lead them. You don't know what to tell them. You don't know how to keep them accountable. You don't know how to have a system in place for management of these agencies. So whether it's an agency, hiring somebody in-house, but that's the next area of focus.
And it's interesting, right? Because I know I've read books. I've also, put my own thoughts and theory behind supply and demand, right? So
Yeah.
demand is that marketing side, right? So when you get to a level where you've taken yourself off the administrative, you've kind of perfected and seen some fulfillment and development, SOPs and started to develop
Mm-hmm.
that. Like you said, right? If that demand is too high and your supply of workers is not well trained, you're going to fall on your face, right? So
Correct.
I love that side. So, I guess one of the things that I'm very interested in too is as you've developed this business, right? Starting with
Mm-hmm.
that accounting platform, and then it looks like you've kind of positioned yourself more of taking that specific CEO and founder and taking more of a role of coaching with them. Is that what
That's
you're
right.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So, what is it that then has helped you, take that piece of the puzzle and start to master that, right? Where are you seeing components of that be something that now you created a business inside your own business of this
Mm-hmm.
coaching and development side?
Well, I've always been drawn to that thought process, even as a kid. I mean, my brother brought in Anthony Robbins tapes when it was Personal Power back in 1990 something. I don't know.
Four.
And
Yeah.
it was big tape set, like this big. And I listened to him at like 8 years old. And I just thought it was awesome. This guy's going nuts and he's flying his helicopter into his own events. I was like, whoa, that seems really cool. So those ideas have always been intriguing and interesting to me. And throughout all of my life, I've always had a book that I'm reading that's in that vein, from Zig Ziglar to Tony Robbins to some a little more spiritual, some a little more business tactical, some a little more sales and motivational, but always in that kind of self-development arena. So I just love talking about this stuff. That's one thing. The other, I guess, is really I'm seeing that without the mindset and without the people recognize people, the founders, the leaders of these organizations, without them working on themselves, it doesn't matter what systems you put in place. They'll sabotage it, they'll undermine it, they'll break it. We all have like this thermostat, John. It's like our home, right? And like I just changed mine because it's getting colder, and I just changed my thermostat at home because my wife's like, it's kind of chilly in here. So I adjusted where the cooler kicks on and the heater kicks on. And so there's this range right here. And in that range, everybody in the house is happy. When it goes below this, people are like, brr. Right? When it's above this, it's like, what's going on? So right here is the happy place. And we create these habits mentally, and emotionally. We kind of get stuck in our own thermostat block, and it's just such a fulfilling thing to help people see that block, and then to break out of it and really turn it kind of like this. It's like taking the floor, and that floor now becomes the new ceiling. The ceiling becomes a new floor, and
Yeah.
they level up and they go from 2.0, where it's like they'll never go back below that. Now, I'll be honest, I think businesses are always going to be, I was about to say broken, there's always an issue, but I don't know if broken is the right word. There's always something to solve. There's always a puzzle somewhere, because if it wasn't for people, I think business would be a lot easier, but you have to sell to people. You have to get employees to work for you. You have to, you've got all these things, and it's just all people based, and people have bad days. And so there's complexity there. There's difficulty that you have to deal with. But it gives a really good kind of like proving ground to become, it's like a self-development school. You can really work on yourself, and you can look at it through that lens and get a lot more fulfillment from it, in my mind, in my opinion. So I really love that part of it. And I've had all these experiences over the years, good and bad. A company that did nearly $100 million a year, to losing it all, to exiting other companies, and I've been at the top, and I've been smashed quickly back to the bottom, and I've recognized some of the common threads there. So I feel right now that, like, why I do this is I feel truly like it's calling. Like there's a reason that I went through all of this. And if my goal now, and I just talked about this with our team here just in the last 2 weeks, like I've got a new goal. It's to reach 50,000 businesses. Because I've been doing the coaching for a few years, and I love it. I love the impact that I have one-to-one. But I'm like, man, we only have like 10 clients in a year. That's not very much. So if we do books and records for much more, but I want to impact more people, because if somebody can hear this story and think, I've been avoiding my numbers too, and they just set up a call once a quarter with their CPA, I know that in 6 to 12 months, they are going to be so much better off. And if they'll just follow that simple system. So I want to get 50,000 business owners following me on Instagram or LinkedIn or something, just to have an impact and say, take a page out of my book. You don't have to get kicked in the face as hard as I did to learn the same lesson that I did.
I love it. I mean, I'll shamelessly plug my book, The 4A Formula, just came out in October. Go
Oh,
search it
nice.
if you haven't checked it out. It's a story of 200 plus business owners being interviewed on my podcast. It's a story of me being an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, having a story like Justin, my first endeavor, where I wanted to avoid the financials, and
Yep.
there's some heartache that came with the IRS on that scenario. But then there was a triumph in 2009 where I, exited my business. I got married,
Yeah.
and then I became a banker. So I always joke around. I went from entrepreneur to banker, and then I've always had entrepreneurial heart, as I put on my LinkedIn. But
Yeah.
what a cool spirit, what a cool mindset, what a cool vision, and the millions and millions and millions of businesses, especially in America, let alone the world,
Yeah.
to have a chunk of 50,000 is a formidable goal. And what a cool thing. And hopefully we can do that even through this podcast and through some of the other
Yeah.
ones
Awesome.
that you're on as well, to really impact those. Because I will say, I mean, I know when you said that lineup of people, I started thinking of like Ed Milet or PBD or,
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
the other guys that have come up over the years, or Andy Frisella.
Yep.
I mean, it's that genre. And it's so funny. Some people are like, oh, you like those guru guys. Like, you know what? Some are a bit fake, right? Because they haven't really
Yeah.
done it. But
Yeah.
some actually have real things that they built or real failures that they've had. And
Sure.
that's Justin. That's one of the reasons I built Go4CEO. I wanted to interview CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs that weren't Mark Cuban famous.
Right. Right.
And Justin is a guy that I love having on because you're hearing real stories and how he's talking about a framework. Look at that, administrative. What was the
Delivery.
development and
Delivery.
fulfillment,
Yeah.
and then the next one was
Marketing.
right, marketing, and then the last one is
Leadership.
leadership. So let's
There's
get
sales in there and then leadership. Yeah. So
all
sales
sales
is,
and then leadership. Okay, all
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
nice,
So
nice. All right, so
sales,
let's go to those last two
you
areas,
got
and
it.
then we're going to go with the end of what we do with CEO and ask you a couple
Cool.
questions.
Okay. So with sales, again, that's something you don't want to let go of. Even founders that say, like, I'm really not good with sales, a founder is always the best person to sell because nobody's
Yeah.
ever, ever, ever going to care about it as much as a founder. But that's where you move into that, and then you can duplicate and replace yourself there in that division next. Once you have lead supplies, right? And there's a great book that I want to plug here called The Goal. I can't think of the name. It's kind of a hard to pronounce name, but the book is called The Goal. And he speaks about in that the theory of constraints, which is it talks about there's always areas in business to focus on. And if your problem is in sales, don't go focus in customer service, right? Like if you're building cars in a factory and you do 4 sets of wheels every day, 4 engines every day, but only 1 chassis, put all your energy as the founder into the chassis department because the wheels and the engines they're doing 4. But if the chassis go to 6, then you shift your focus. So you're always kind of doing this round robin thing, jumping around different things. And that's kind of part of I have sort of a round robin flywheel with the freedom flywheel that I work with founders too, where it's delegation, systems, and mindset. Like there's just 3 areas that we just keep going through as I work with people because they've got to learn these skills. They've got to level up in the pyramid. The last point of that pyramid is leadership. So if you want to grow an organization to where you become truly the owner and not an operator, then you're going to need to bring in leaders. But when you need to do that at the top, at the end, after you've built up to that, and you've got to go through those levels at the right sequence because it's going to teach you skills each time. When you try to figure out how to create leads so that all your business doesn't just come through referrals when you're in the marketing section, you're going to learn a bunch of crap. You're going to realize that, well, I didn't realize there was this much competition. I didn't realize there was this. I didn't realize that. And then you learn and you go up. How can I bring in salespeople to do not all that I could do, but maybe 80% or 90% of what I could do on the phones or out in the field. But now think of this. You're at the top. You're focused on C-level kind of leadership. Now you've got a business that's bringing in revenue and income. It's paying leaders, it's paying salespeople, it's paying for leads and marketing, it's paying for administrative and back office support. You can now run it as an owner. Your presence is not required for the business. You're there, it's still your influence, it's still you can still input your flavor on it. It's your company, but that's what ownership really should be. And that's what a lot of people kind of yearned for when they started the business. And they get trapped in level 1.0 to 2.0 and it's tough down there. But if you follow that pyramid hierarchy, you're gonna arm yourself for success.
Well, I love the foundation that you've put together in that pyramid style to get people to the leaders. I will
Thanks.
say, as you were saying, leadership, I thought to myself, kingmaker, right? When you become the kingmaker at the leadership position, you can set yourself up with a C-suite. You can set yourself up with,
Yeah.
direct reports to those C-suite. You can set yourself up with a great administrator, and then the culture is being built that whole time to just engine
Yes.
proof that. So
Yes.
really, really cool stuff. So as we finish up our interviews, we always like to go through CEO. So C is
Okay.
for client experience, and this will be Propel Enterprises, your coaching within Propel,
Okay.
what that experience looks like. E is engagement. I love that you talked about that you worked with one of your gals to set up a party and a barbecue, these type of things. So that's engagement type things. And then O is operational excellence. We'll talk about AI or some other things that you have fully
Okay.
implemented that you like. So from a client experience, value proposition, Propel Enterprises, people look you up, they reach you, and they reach your business. What are they expecting as a client experience?
The main thing that my mantra and what we do for people is really get them unstuck. Uh, and that's kind of broad and messy, but a lot of no, every one of the clients that we work with feels a sense of just stuckness. It's like I can't do this. I always have to do this. So a business that they once fantasized about starting to build them freedom and independence is giving them the exact opposite. It makes them feel like they're in chains. And that's the experience that I give. And the way that I do that is through coaching. I typically get with people. There's different levels and things that I can do, but I work with people on a weekly basis, so there's a little bit of a rhythm and expectations that we get into that I can go through our freedom flywheel method, which is my approach to cycling through these three core areas of systems, of delegating effectively, and a mindset to back it up, and then move to the next level of building new systems. And again, you can think of that pyramid as kind of like the guide to the levels. Um, but system, mindset, delegation, we've got to go through each of those three to effectively go into the next. Because a system without the right mindset, you stay right back in this thermostat zone, right? So that's the flywheel method to ensure that we can start to achieve a level of freedom. And again, the main goal is time. My first win, that I can give. I guess it starts with this premise, John. I don't think that I could run your business better than you. But what I know for sure that I can do is help you get back more of the time that you're leaking, and then you can make your business better as a result through mindset, systems, and delegation. I guarantee it 100% of the time. I can do that every time.
Well, those of you that contact them will experience unstuck, right? I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So E is for engagement. You mentioned real quick, you maybe do some barbecues with your team. What are you doing with vendors? What are you doing with clients? Is there anything that you do retreats? Like, not everybody does these things, but I'd love to hear. And we're always interested in like, how do people engage with Justin and your leadership style? Like, what do you like to do to keep people cultured and engaged?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that. I love to be face to face every time that I can. And so if there's somebody, whether it's a vendor, whether it's I have one of our VAs works offshore somewhere over in Europe, and we're sending him. I don't have it here, like a Yeti mug and things with engraved name on it. Like I just like doing things like that to make them feel like our team part of the culture. Um, and so it's gonna, I mean, it'll cost 10 times what the mug actually costs to get it there, just to ship it where it is. But that'll be something that we like to do that just as a sense of team and a camaraderie, So the same mug is sitting on everybody's desk and the same water bottles and the same that kind of stuff. And then we have regular things that we do like holiday parties and Christmas and year end and those kind of things as a team. And with vendors and clients, whenever possible, I like to get together face to face. And if it makes sense for the relationship and for the clientele, we can't go out and meet with everybody that we work with, but anytime that we can, or anytime we're in those areas, that face-to-face handshake connection is just invaluable. We are humans and social creatures, even guys like me that are a little bit reclusive and quiet, and I'm just as happy to be alone in the woods by myself. But making that connection with people face to face is that's how I really like to engage because I know it gets me invested, it gets my team invested, it gets them invested with us, and it's like when we know that we're all just people dealing with people, a lot of the BS, the noise, or the complaints and the grumbling just it naturally goes away. Just naturally. It's like there's a saying from it's an old quote that says, "The blossom vanishes of itself as the fruit appears." and so does the lower self vanish as the divine grows within you. And I think of that because it's like as I focus on building relationships or engagement with team or engagement with clients or engagement with vendors, a lot of the little petty silly things that could keep us kind of distracted, it just goes away because we have a connection that's real. We have a connection that's more than just a transactional sort of connection.
Nate, Nate. Well, I love that. I mean, I think there's such power in that middle step of E for engagement. Because you
Yeah.
duly noted it. We're all human beings, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's going to have a different style. I've had CEOs on the podcast say, "Hey, I'll figure out what this person likes. Maybe they're a fisherman, or that person's a golfer, or this person's a likes to shoot guns, or these
Yeah.
little things that are, or they're a big aficionado of Mexican food, or whatever that it
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
be." It's such a neat part to keep, and I wonder where you'd stack that in your pyramid engagement. Well, I'll just give you a total impromptu question there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the duty of a founder or an owner to know this. And so I'm glad you triggered that thought with me because one of the things that I do with all my direct reports is I know every one of their 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year goals. Like I got a document on my computer. So I know that when we're doing something that's in line with one of those, or if we hit a certain milestone, I may help to reward them or maybe incentivize them and encourage them to do a little bit more of something or less of another thing to hit this goal. And for example, one of the guys wants to pay off some student debt. And so the last raise that he got, my incentive to him was, I'm going to give you this raise. And what I'd like to do, because I know it's important for you to get out of debt, is I'd like to set it up with our payroll department that 25% of it goes directly to your student loans and it like never even hits you. You don't pay an income tax on it. It's just, it's out the door. And then 75% is just added to your paycheck. And he was like, yes. So that kind of an engagement, I noticed, and I'll be honest, I'll notice from the previous raise that he had that zero went to his debt because I do quarterly check-ins at least, if not more often, with my DRIs, my direct responsible reporting individuals. And I ask about student loan debt and where the balance was. And then 6 months later, I'm like, so how's the student debt going? He's like, oh, not that good. I didn't do anything. So that makes him feel a little less confident, a little less confident with his marriage, less confident in his job. As a human, it makes you feel less confident. Now, how can I help? Well, he's doing a great job at work. I want to give him a raise. If I can give him a raise and I can tie that to one of the things that's important to him, which is also undermining some of his confidence because he's just feeling tight, like he can't make those changes. Now, for the last 5 months or so, he's been getting $100 a month just auto going to his student loans to get paid off. Now he's got a little more spring in his step. So I would say to any other leaders out there, find out what's important to your people. And one of my coaches told me, like, you need to have a dream big enough that's like this so that all your people's dreams fit inside of that. Because if they feel like your dream is big enough that their dream can be accomplished through your dream, they'll stay with you, they'll fight with you, they will work hard for you. But as soon as they feel like, oh, you're a small thinker and my dream is going to go that way, like they're out. They're looking for something else. So I think it's critical to know what your employees' dreams are, and maybe not every one of them. I did an interview with a guy just the other day, and he said that one of the two biggest things he'd exited 12 different companies. I was at a business show and I was just grabbing random people and I was asking him, what's the thing that what's the number one thing? And he said that empowering people to run the company like they owned it was one of them. And that was I was like, wow, some people would be a little scared about that. He's like, no, no, not at all. And that's just one thing, knowing their goals and empowering them to run the company like it was theirs. And the other tied to compensation, which is anybody who found waste that was cut, they bring it up and it was cut, they would get 50% of the savings over the next year. And he said, I had an assistant once get a check. She was paid $37,000 back then a year. She got a check for 120 grand because of the savings over the next 12 months. $120,000 check. So there's cool things like that you can do. And that was a good one that I just learned just this week. But I love doing things. That's why I go to those events, just to grab and learn things. And most guys I was talking to there were doing $500,000, but there's the sleepers that are kind of wandering through the crowd. And this guy was worth uh, nine figures. He had, he had done a lot. So you get a few tips. coming in like that off the radar you weren't expecting.
For sure. No, those are great examples, right, of little things that you could do differently, and just think outside the box to be able to propel areas that can really grow
Yeah.
fast based on that momentum that you built. So,
Yeah.
all right, last one is operational excellence, right? When you think about systems and you're a coach and the business helps accounting, all that type of stuff. What are some of the tools you're using as far as operational systems?
Um, the quick development of SOPs through AI has been something that has accelerated our progress and progress with our clients more than anything ever has. I mean, it used to take so long to develop and write up a standard operating procedure and try to collect all the information, but now we can do it so quickly. It can crunch the data so fast. It can watch the video for us so fast. We can create a Loom video of this whole complicated thing, have AI watch the video, turn it into a checklist, turn it into an instruction sheet, and then with just a little seasoning on it, it's a perfected SOP. And that process might have taken us 2 months with 5, 10 hours a week, every week for a 2 month period of time. We can do in under 30 minutes, 30, 45 minutes now. So that is an absolute game changer. I'll give you an example if there's time. There's a quick, like I wanted to do meal prep to get in shape. And I didn't want to do meal prep. No, let me restate that. I wanted to get in shape, and I knew meal prep was a required ingredient as I started to break down my goals through my goal frameworks. And I'm like, okay, I got to do the meal prep. After 2 days, I was pissed. I was like, I hate this so bad. It was taking like 2 hours a day to prep the meals for the next day. So after realizing that like my back was hurting and I was getting stressed and frustrated, I grabbed my phone, put it on a tripod, filmed the countertop of what I was doing, and I just continued to prep the next 3 meals, speaking out loud what I was doing, why I was weighing it, and what kind of things I was doing. I loaded that in ChatGPT. I made a checklist and I made an SOP. I came into work the next day and I said, "Hey, will you guys put an ad on Facebook? I just need somebody in my house, like for 2, 3 hours, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Less than $150 a week, have somebody come in, prep all my meals. I carry this box around. There's 2,100 calories in this box. Exactly. I eat everything in that box every single day, and I've never been in better health, and I don't spend any time doing it. Like it's phenomenal."
That was awesome. That was sick. No, yeah, it's funny because that's one of the I talk about faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, right? And
Uh-huh.
optimizing those areas. And I stole that
Love it.
from someone, but I think it's a 5 areas that we all as human beings could really work on.
Yeah.
And the fitness one, that one I've always struggled. I don't get fat, but I'll get skinny like too fast. Sometimes I'll lose
Okay.
weight. And it's so funny because, I always talk about like, well, I need to get like 5, 10 more pounds, more bulk and mass. And
Yeah.
it's all about that. It's all that I don't consume enough to
Yeah.
put into my body that's lean protein and all the
Right.
things that I need to. But
Yep.
like you said, it's a total beach right, to go through that process stuff.
Oh,
But that's where, again, what a great lesson. You've paid someone $150, which if you break it down, maybe it's 25, $30 an hour, right? And that person took all that stress off your plate.
totally.
You have
Totally.
literally a Yeti box there that has
Yeah.
everything you need. Now,
Yeah.
all you need is that discipline to eat it throughout the day and
Yeah.
make sure
Which
you're
is,
doing
yeah.
that, which is
Which is
on you,
almost
right? That's
nothing. Yeah.
accountability, right?
Yeah.
So
The,
awesome,
the
awesome
the
stuff.
cool part about that and then it grows like after she came over for a while and it blesses her life too. She
Yeah,
needed the money. She wanted the job. But then she
yeah,
comes over. I'm like, I noticed the floor was kind of dirty when you left yesterday. Would you mind just mopping the kitchen like once a week when you're in there? She's like, yeah, sure. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, cool. And then my wife is happy because she's like, oh, wow, the kitchen's clean. I'm like, yeah, right. I did that ish. I'm
That's right.
responsible for that, I guess.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then later, I was like, the whole bathroom, could you, my boys, they're not the most neat and tidy kids. Like, maybe you can. She's like, yeah, for sure. So now she'll grab groceries on her way over sometimes, like these things. And I picked that up from an old client that I was coaching that was actually cleaning her office space on Saturdays. And I'm like, Matt, you are making $400 an hour is what about her going rate was. And that's a place that we start with founders that are, because a lot of people are like, I don't know where to start. What should I do? What should I delegate? What should I not delegate? The framework, the pyramids makes sense, but what exactly should I do? And that's what I help them go through this process with the freedom document that we go kind of through a checklist. They come up with kind of their rate, what their hourly rate kind of is, their time is worth.
Mm.
Based on that, it's like anything that's below a certain level, it's selfish and stupid. Like you're screwing your team if you're spending time cleaning the office because
Mm.
there's somebody in town that would love the income, probably clean better than you. And then when you come into the office on Monday, you're like, this is nice. It feels good and it doesn't cost you very much money. And if you spend that time, 2 hours doing something like that's $800. If somebody else cleans the office for $20 an hour for 2 hours, that's $40. What are you doing pulling these little levers when you could be pulling big $10,000 levers, you know?
Well, and I'll be a devil's advocate because I know there's some business owners that are probably watching this
Yeah,
or people
please.
that are in this space, right? They go, well, yeah, but I want to be able to pick up that piece of garbage and be the show coacher, right? Like show coach that I'm the CEO and I could pick up that piece of garbage. That's not what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
No.
Justin is talking about creating systems so that you relieve yourself of that time, energy, and space, right? Of that
Yeah.
burden, right?
Burdens.
By
Yes.
you being a CEO, walking through your factory and picking up that piece of paper and showing someone that you put in the garbage, and you're not, too cool to do that. That's a mindset. That's a culture side. That's
For
different.
sure.
So
For
I
sure.
just wanted to clarify that because I feel like somebody would watch what you just shared there and be
I'm
like, oh,
glad
well,
you
what
did.
about this? So
I'm very glad you did because that's so much different than that CEO coming into the factory on Saturday when nobody's there and being like, I got to clean up after all these guys. Mother, you know, getting
yeah,
frustrated.
exactly. Exactly. So, well, awesome, Justin. Thank you so much. Off camera, you did me a favor this morning to change
My pleasure.
time
No
frame.
worries.
So, but thank you for being on the Go4CEO channel. Let everybody know how to get a hold of you. The website. Are you active on LinkedIn? Where can people interact with you if
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
looking for coaching? So,
I'm on LinkedIn. Come on over and find me there. I'm on probably more active on Instagram and TikTok. So if there's anything here that resonated, and in fact, I have some of these frameworks that are just Google Docs that my team uses. So if there's anything about, finding a good CPA, if that's something that you need, if there's, trying to figure out what is your time worth, where should you start? I have the freedom document. Like just come over there and shoot me the word CEO. I'll know it came from this show and let me know. I'm happy to share anything that I have there on Instagram.
awesome, brother. Well, cool. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and pick up the book, The 4A Formula, Assess until Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. Guys like Justin and the people that he work with, interviews on my podcast and myself, my own entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneur spirit, all packed into that. Assess, align, take accountability and attack in your life. And there's some bonus stuff with people I've had on the podcast as well. It's on Amazon. It's going off the shelf fast. I'm excited about it, and I hope that you'll partake in it as well. And then look up Justin and see what he does and get that flywheel for yourself to be able to put yourself. I know that I need to go from, I've already had for many years, 250 is my per hour. That's where I think I'm
Yep.
worth, but I need to get that to 500 and
Ah,
1,000
okay.
per hour so that's one of my goals. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge, my man.
Good to be
So
here. Thanks,
take
John.